Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. I am Sophfronia Scott, Director of the Alma College MFA in Creative Writing, and this is our presentation of new fiction by our MFA faculty. I will introduce Karen E. Bender in a moment. I'll tell you a little bit about the program right off the bat. We are a low residency Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing degree. That is a 2-year degree. We have a low residency model. That means you don't have to move, you don't have to leave a job to attend this program. You come to 2 residencies a year, one in August and one in January. They last about 10 days. During those residencies, they are intensive. So you are in lectures, you're in workshop where you're having your work read and you're reading the work of your classmates, getting feedback, receiving feedback, giving feedback. You're also attending readings, meeting visiting writers. We usually also have a publishing industry component because I believe it's important for writers to learn about the industry and where their writing fits in the publishing world. You are assigned a faculty advisor. You get to choose. You usually interview faculty either right before or during the residency and submit your choices. Then you and that advisor collaborate on a study plan that you will execute for the rest of the semester. That study plan will include a reading list as well as a series of deadlines for critical and creative work that you will be submitting to that advisor. With this kind of program, you not only generate a lot of work, you learn very quickly. You also have a dedicated group of fellow writers. You form a community. We just got back from Oxford, England. We had our summer residency there last month. And more than once, I heard students talk about how not only was the experience of being in Oxford important, but that they got to share it with their community, with their classmates, made it extra special. So it's a unique way to earn a degree, but it's also something that will stay with you even after you graduate. Our students have collaborated on projects. There are 4 students, alumni, who've recently launched a literary journal. We also offer the Alma MFA Book Award. The first recipient was named last month. This is an opportunity for our students and alumni to compete for a book contract with a small press called Running Wild Press. Um, I know that getting that first book done is a big obstacle for most writers, so we were happy to figure this out in the program to offer the opportunity to our students to get that first book published. We also, one of the things that I love about our faculty, the low residency model is really what real life is, that you have a family, that you have a job, and that you still somehow have to get writing done. And what I love about our faculty is that they model that for our students. We have, I believe, 5 of our faculty have books published this year, which is amazing. And we wanted to feature that and celebrate them in this season's open houses. So tonight we have one of our fiction faculty, the illustrious Karen E. Bender. Karen is the author of 3 short story collections, Refund, which was a finalist for the National Book Award in Fiction, a shortlist selection for the Frank O'Connor International Short Story Prize, a long list selection for the Story Prize, and a Los Angeles Times bestseller, and The New Order, a long list selection for the Story Prize. Her new collection, The Words of Dr. L, was published in May 2025. She's also the author of 2 novels, Like Normal People, a Los Angeles Times bestseller, a Washington Post Best Book of the Year, and a Barnes & Noble Discover Great New Writers selection, and A Town of Empty Rooms. Her fiction has appeared in magazines including The New Yorker, Granta, Zoetrope, Plowshares, the Yale Review, the Harvard Review, Guernica, and others, and has been reprinted in Best American Short Stories, Best American Mystery Stories, and won 3 Pushcart Prizes. She has won grants from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Rona Jaffe Foundation. Karen has taught creative writing at universities including Hollins University, the University of Iowa, Warren Wilson College, Chatham University and Tung Hai University, and currently teaches for the MFA program at SUNY Stony Brook, as well as the MFA at Alma College. So thank you for being here with us this evening, Karen.
Oh, thank you, Sophronia. It's just a joy. Yeah, it's such a wonderful program, and it's just so wonderful to be part of it.
So I understand you're going to share some of the work
Sure,
from
yeah. So the Words of Dr. L is a short story collection I wrote over probably maybe about 6 years, and I feel like I started it around when the Alma program actually maybe started. I wonder if that's true. It started at what year?
2021 was our first residency.
2021, yeah. So I started maybe a little bit before, but what's actually nice is I read a lot of the stories in progress at Ballyhoo Books, which is the bookstore that's kind of part of Alma. It's a wonderful bookstore, and it was nice to get that support as I was creating the book. These stories are mostly speculative stories, as you can kind of tell from the cover. It's, kind of a very like 70s, like Ursula Le Guin kind of vibe to it, which I just love. And this is a departure for me. I was mostly realist fiction before, but I started kind of veering into more speculative and seeing the advantages to both. And so this story, I know this one of Sophronia's favorite story, so I'm going to read it. It's a flash fiction called The Shame Exchange. And I wrote it. The story behind this story is that my husband and our family would we were living in North Carolina, and we come to New York in the summer and stay with his mother in New York. And it was a little bit crowded. And there was one day, it was actually my birthday, and I was doing a laundry. And I liked doing laundry because it gave me a little space and quiet. And I thought, I'm going to write a story for myself on my birthday. And this idea had come to me like sort of over like time. I always wanted to write, but I actually hadn't had a moment to. And I thought I'm going to write it in between this like laundry cycle. So this is actually the fastest story I wrote. It's interesting. It's very short, but it just kind of it kind of been percolating for a while, and then it just came out. So it's called The Shame Exchange. No one knew who originally proposed it. The government would mandate an exchange of shame. Citizens who held too much shame, which interfered with their productivity, would come to an official site where their shame would be handed to a government official who had none. Many people in both the government and technology sectors were involved in organizing this exchange and had not been easy to agree on the terms. The government was for years not sufficiently responsive to the needs of its citizens, and this is what a panel finally decided to do. The citizens would be selected by lottery, interviewed, and examined with an ultrasound machine, and those who were unduly burdened by their shame would be told to participate. Being quite shameful, they had trouble saying no and could always be convinced. Psychologists had created a technique in which they could detect a person's shame through the ultrasound and transform it into a physical hulking thing. It was on average the size of a large pillow and resembled a raw steak. Their shame would be removed using non-invasive laser technology, carefully packaged by professionals and stored in large refrigerators. The shame still belonged to the participants, but during the exchange, it would be presented in a controlled environment to those who had none. The event would take place in a large warehouse, somewhere in the middle of the nation. Though there was much interest in the details of the exchange, who gave what to whom, etc., no one outside the participants would be allowed to watch. The proceedings would be, sorry, my sorry, the proceedings would be heavily guarded. No one was allowed to meet or speak to one another. Everyone was instructed to wear a mask, a simple plastic one, constructed in the shape of a lion, dog, rabbit, or other animal to conceal their identity. They would all be told to dress professionally in clothing suitable for an office. Elected officials would be required to undergo a test. Those officials whose shame did not reach a certain appropriate and decent level were ordered to the warehouse at the appointed time. Every member of the legislative, judicial, and executive branches would be required to take the test, and some would try cleverly to impersonate shame when they had none. But the test had questions that revealed these attempts. Psychologists had worked very hard on these tests, and all attempts at false shame would be detected. As word spread, more and more citizens signed up to hand over their shame. They could drive themselves or provided a pleasant air-conditioned bus from their home to the warehouse. More buses were quickly added as citizens in buzzing, excited numbers signed up. As soon as certain elected officials were informed of their low scores of shame, they were escorted to locked vehicles that would transport them to the warehouse. No one quite knew what happened in the locked vehicles, so rumors spread the politicians were, during that final ride, given anything they wanted. This had been negotiated with much back and forth in backroom deals. The vehicles sped across the country, not stopping until they reached the warehouse. The ones with no shame entered a large, empty, light-filled building and stood across from the ones who were handing over their shame. The 2 rows of individuals stood across from each other wearing masks, which made it appear that everyone was about to engage in a dance. Armed guards, screened for their capacity to resist bribery or threats, stood around them all watching. The ones with no shame moved slowly, coolly, but under their masks, they appeared to be scanning the room, trying to determine who was here. Those in row 1 clutched their shame, the bags heavy as though they contained broken, dripping melons. Some people double-bagged their shame, as shame had a tendency to leak. There was a sharp and bitter odor of rot. They looked embarrassed, shoulders hunched, even if they were handing over this burden. They understood all too clearly what this entailed. They could not meet the eyes of the ones in row 2. Some even seemed reluctant to hand over their shame at all, to burden another with it. But that was what they were here to do. Row 2, hold out your hands, announced a voice. The ones with no shame refused to follow instructions. They did not hold out their hands. The guards had to grab their hands and forcibly lift them up. The guards pried open their curled fingers. No one said the recipients had to accept the shame willingly. A few of them screamed, and a couple of large security guards stepped in to stop some from running away. A couple individuals in row 2 chuckled, as though not believing this would actually happen. Row 1, place your bag into the hands of row 2. Those in row 1, some weeping or trembling, lifted their own bulky packages of shame and placed each one into the hands of the person standing opposite them in row 2. There was a deadly quiet in the warehouse. The guards pressed the heavy packages of shame into the palms of those who had none. The ones in row 1 stepped back. They looked at each other and laughed. They were advised to keep just a handful of shame for themselves, not giving all of it up to the ones in row 2. A handful of shame would help them get along with family, friends, or work. A handful, that was all. The warehouse was silent for a few moments and then echoed with the sound of one person laughing, then another, then everyone in row 1. The pure sound of being unburdened, relief. An ice cream truck offering vanilla, chocolate, and pistachio was set up outside the warehouse so that they could celebrate. Some of those in row 1 literally skipped out the door. The ones in row 2 clutched the packages of shame, or more accurately, the guards fit their hands around the packages. There was a deep silence, though some officials began to cry in a choking, confusing way. It was the first time some of them have cried. Everyone in the warehouse watched them with interest, wondering what they would now be. Everyone in row 1 left the warehouse, zipped out to the rest of their lives. The ones in row 2 had their hands full forever. Shame plinked onto the concrete floor. The warehouse was almost empty now. Outside, drivers stood by the vehicles that had brought them here, waiting for the officials to come out. The drivers of the cars had been gathering in small groups, chattering with each other, but they quickly went on to their respective cars and stood very still. In a few minutes, they would drive the officials back to the Capitol, where they would return to their work governing the nation. Now what? Unfortunately, those who had organized this exchange had no further plan. All the research planning had brought to this day to the trembling hope that the ones in row two, now chock full of shame, would govern with sensitivity and in a kindly way. Would this happen? They checked the locked vehicles held food that the officials had requested, though some might be so distraught they would not eat. Had the locked vehicles been cleaned? Were skilled therapists on board each vehicle? Were people knowledgeable about a variety of policies ready to ride back with them? Now that they were burdened with a great deal of shame, the officials needed to be treated with a bit of tenderness. This way, said one organizer, the ones in row two filed out slowly. The shame was now part of them, and the packages be taken to a sterilized and locked facility. Organizers in hazmat suits took the shame from their hands and set the packages onto a special truck. The politicians moved slowly and with deliberation. They would not remove their masks until they were safely inside the car. Many people here were afraid to see their faces. So much work had gone into this exchange, so much planning. Was this finally the strategy that would help the nation? The organizers watched the officials get into their cars. The cars started, turned, and drove onto the highway. Those at the warehouse stood watching the cars vanish into the distance, and then everyone carefully cheered. That's the story.
Yay.
It was a fun story to write. And it's so relevant.
It's
So
relevant. It's so relevant.
this was written, 8 years ago or 6 years ago. So yeah, so I mean, so one thing about this story is as a speculative story is that you want to get the details, you're making up the world, so you want to make the details really precise so that the reader will be, transported to this kind of, other version of the world. In realism, you use really specific details as well. So I think one thing that's similar, and I talk about with both, students writing any sort of fiction, speculative, realistic, historical, is that you want to have the really good, specific, concrete details that will make this world alive. Like here, it was very fun to make shame, something that leaked.
Yes.
Just like a fun thing to make up.
I feel very Twilight Zone when I
Yeah, yeah,
read this stuff,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's really cool. Now, here's the thing though, and you said this at another event, which totally blew my mind. So I wanted you to talk about it here, is that and you've just told the room, this is my favorite story. I love this story from the first
Thank
time
you.
I ever read it. But you said that your editor didn't think it belonged in this book.
Well, I mean, I think, my editor I trust completely. And the book's theme was more as we kind of put it together. I thought the actual theme was maybe shame, but it ended up being parents and children separating at different points of life, which actually was a different kind of theme. But the story still kind of fit, I thought. And I just, I said I think it should be here. And so it's here. Yeah.
Well, if only for that one line about how you have to keep a handful of shame, right? Your own family,
That's right. That's
right?
true. That's
Right?
right.
So there's a connection.
It's true. That's the connection.
So can you talk a little bit about that kind of negotiation? I think newer writers don't realize that it is a conversation when you work with an editor, that it's not just they tell you to do
Yeah.
something, you have to change it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I think the publishing world is very varied, and some editors don't do a lot of hands-on work. Some do. My editor does, and I really appreciate it. And, mostly, there are suggestions I agree with, and signs if I don't, I'll say, but, sometimes I think, he'll say something that I won't necessarily think is right, but actually sometimes I think is right. I know with my first book, my first book was it was actually about three generations of women. Kind of in the hub of it was a mentally challenged woman in her 40s and how she affected the family. And one point of view is two points of view. One was her grandmother, her mother, who was like a grandmother, and so that was third person. And there was another that was first person, that was a 14-year-old girl that was never quite working. And my editor then said, you have to turn this into third person, so it's all unified. And first
Mm.
I was like, my God, what does she mean? No, but then she was right and actually made the tone consistent for the book. So there can be things that land and you're like, I don't know, but I think that's part of becoming a writer. And this is actually something that relates to workshop, which
Yeah,
is you want to listen to feedback that confirms your suspicion about something you have about a piece. You don't like take everything. You take what
yes.
feels helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, Karen. I want students to know that you go into workshop, you're not going in there just to say, okay, do they like it or do they not? The idea is that you have questions about the piece, right? There's something that you're trying to do. The
Yeah.
question is, does it work or not? And
Mhm.
can I get feedback that can help me do the thing that I want to do? But
Mhm.
if you don't have those thoughts in the first place, then you're kind of twisting in the wind to whatever anybody says. Um,
Right.
the,
Right.
the word intentional, I find I comes up a lot for me that I hope in this program that the students learn to be intentional about their art.
Mhm. Absolutely. No, I think that's great. And also I was just thinking, and I see this in a lot of other places that I teach is a feeling of community, right? That writers feel you can feel so lonely, like it's so hard to be a writer in all different cultures, right? It's just like very few places are really like, come on, writers, we love, like
Right.
I
Yeah.
think you need to find a place where your work is really valued and writing is valued. And like the Alma program is one of those unique places where that happens. You have this community of people that are all, trying to write and trying to get better at their writing, all writing different things from many different, backgrounds. And that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that when that you learn different things about yourself as a writer. And I see that in the students, but personally, myself as an MFA student that, I went in there thinking I was only studying fiction and then came out being both a fiction and a nonfiction writer,
Yes.
that there's this opportunity to explore, right? And to end up writing things that you never expected to write.
Totally. I mean, I have this unfortunate tendency to make people want to write short stories. Which is like, I'm sorry. But I think like that's a thing, like people don't realize, like, oh, it is really great when because also you read all these great, it's this opportunity to read, and like the study list you come up with your mentees is so wonderful because you can really follow interests of the student. I have one guy I was working with now who really was interested in literary horror. So we had some horror texts and then other things that seemed horrific, but not necessarily horror, that was really
Yeah.
interesting, which could teach him, and not someone else doing, historical, so you have all different reading lists that you create specifically for the student. And then, they may read things they didn't know that they would be interested in. And they're like, oh, this gives me all these ideas.
Yeah, exactly. There's a student studying poetry who wanted to do something long form, and I was talking to her about novels in verse, which she had
Right.
never heard about before. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is totally
Right.
something that you can do." And
Right.
giving her Jason Reynolds and Catherine Applegate to read, and so
Right.
exciting to see her beginning to explore that. Um,
Right.
and also thinking in terms of just well, you mentioned short stories. I mean, to me, uh, even if you're a novel writer, it's about telling a story.
Mhm.
And a short
Absolutely.
story is the opportunity to practice
Mhm.
writing narrative, right?
Mhm.
And to me, I mean, the way I write fiction anyway, even when I'm novel writing, I tend to think of my chapters as stories.
Yeah.
So I just think it's an important muscle to
Yeah.
exercise, the
Oh
short story.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, you learn so much from writing a story. You also create things you can send out if you're writing something longer, and that's really helpful to get work out in the world. And also stories are just like an amazing form too. So yeah.
So, Karen, I know that different faculty work with their students differently. So,
Yeah.
when a student is working with you, for example, I believe you're working with 3 students right now. Do you work with them as a separate group, or do you give them a shared text? Do they do anything as a group?
Right. No, it's a great question. So when I've had, 2 or 3 mentees, one thing I like to do with them is give them, have them read a craft book together, like, separately from my packets, like, so I think they were reading The Art of Subtext by Charles Baxter together, and it's just, like, informally, they can, like, each month they read a chapter and they email each other, so it's a way of creating a little community even outside the residency. And then
Mhm.
with the packets, they'll send me their work each month. The study plan is really a nice thing because they, have, 5 packets and we decide kind of vaguely kind of what they're going to turn in for each packet. And
Yeah.
then they turn in, like a story or a revision or, and then, I'll read it each month and get them their feedback. So I feel like that it gives them sort of a deadline,
Mhm.
it gives them a project each month and some kind of deep feedback. And that I think is really a good way
Yeah.
to learn. Yeah.
So do you ever have a situation, I know this happened to me as a student, where you're looking at someone's story and you see that you can tell that there's something that they're struggling with that they probably didn't even know that they're struggling with, like something like point of view.
Sure.
And then and so do you do that, like notice something and then switch up the assignments a little bit to help them work on that thing?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know I had one student and I felt like she was not really understanding her character's backstory or interiority. And I gave her some exercises she could do as part of her packet, which were, just like let's, just some moments in the character's life that may not even be in the book, but that will give you insight into the character. Writing outside the story, writing outside the novel is really helpful. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to give our the people in the Zoom here opportunities to ask questions because they might get to work with you as
Yeah,
well.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Any questions?
Yeah. Yeah, hi, Lisa. It's good to see you.
Hi, nice to see you too. I apologize. I got in a little bit late. The dog takes some precedence on occasion. Really enjoyed that reading, very interesting, and have, yeah, your dialogue has really been, it's exciting, the work that you're doing. Yeah, so I've been to some workshops and just writers groups that Sophfronia has been in, and I'm I'm watching. And I'm not sure what if I will. Yeah, I guess I. So I'm writing now. I I find that the writing and the marketing of writing involve practically two different personalities. Um,
Right.
Yeah. So I'm able to go in and sit down in front of a blank page. And actually, I'm in revision on a project right now, which is, that's another skill set. But yeah, maybe if you would just talk a little bit about the marketing piece of it, because I feel, yeah, what do you do there with that?
Right. So I mean, this is maybe a little bit of an annoying answer, but my thought about the marketing is actually not think about it when you're writing. That thinking about
Yeah.
I mean, I guess my thought is, different professors feel differently about this, in different ways. But my thought is you figure out what you want to say. What do you want to say that hasn't been said in the way that you want to read? Right? Like what book doesn't exist that you feel needs to exist? Because I do feel actually a lot about marketing is actually about originality, like what is the story that needs to be told, or needs to be out there. So I think my job, I think, as a teacher is to get you to write the best thing that you can, and the thing that says most clearly, what you want to say in the most effective way, whether it's a short story or a novel or, whatever, or essay, so that's what I think. I think marketing is something that you think about way down the line when you have published, right? So I don't think I would, my thought is don't worry about it now. Think about what book do you want to see in the bookshelf that you don't see? I don't know. Do you have
Yeah.
other thoughts on that?
Yeah. Um,
Yeah. Um,
maybe your experience is
maybe
now.
your experience is.
I feel the hard
I
part.
feel the hard part.
I'm not sure. Are you
I'm
hearing
not
an
sure. Do you
echo?
hear? Are you
Yeah,
hearing an
echo,
echo?
yeah.
Yeah, echo. Yeah.
I'm not sure where that's coming from. Lisa, could you mute? Maybe I'm bouncing off of you. Okay, that's better. So I find that the hard part of marketing is, finishing the book, sending it off, and then I start working on something else. And then that marketing piece comes back like a year later, and the book is coming out, and I'm deep in something else. And it's like, wait, I gotta go talk about that book, right? So that can be a little crazy. But something to me to think about marketing is just another form of storytelling. And I feel that practically back from the time I got my MFA, it's been about taking people on the story with me. So I let people know this is what I'm doing, this is what's going on, so that it doesn't feel like marketing. It's like, I'm telling you, this is what I'm up to. I just printed out the latest draft of my novel that I'm working on right now. And at some point, I will post that on social media. It's like, oh my gosh, I finished it, right? And then I will talk more about it as, I'll mention it when, at some point, hopefully it'll sell, and I'll talk about that. I'll talk about some of the ideas around what made me write this. But to me, it's not marketing. It's about I'm giving you the story of me doing my work, right? And this is what it means to me. And this is what it's going to be like when it's out there in the world, so that when it does come out, I'm just continuing the conversation, right? So um, it's not about saying, hey, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. It's, this is what I'm doing. And hopefully that as I'm talking, I'm gathering people around me who are interested in the conversation, interested in what I'm saying, and will want to be a part of that when they want to, see it when the book comes out. So I'd say as much as possible, make it natural, make it be who you are, do the things that make sense to you, right? And don't like go into a social media thing just because your publisher tells you to and you have no idea. Well, I'm not going to be on TikTok. I'm not a TikTok person. But do the thing that feels right for you. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yes, thank you both. It does. I went to the Chicago Writers Association to their meeting, and they had different editors and agents, and they were like, "Oh, well, I only take new authors who have followings on social media of 100,000 or more." I mean, and you need to have your own website, and you need to be doing. And I'm like, how do you get that if you don't even if you're still working on your first piece? And also, I've asked this a lot, like finding readers. If you want to have readers, and I mean, how do you go about that? I think maybe an MFA is a great way to go about that, but yeah, maybe you all have something to say about that.
I mean, my thought on the whole agent thing, I've heard this thing about the platform and the followers, and I really do think a good book is a good book, and it's a product that agents will want to try and get to people. So there may be some niches in the publishing world where they're looking at followers, but I know a lot that are not. They just want a good book. So I really do feel strongly that the main thing is writing a book that you believe in, or a story collection or whatever it is. You write something you believe in that's saying something you want to say. I feel like that's my job as a teacher to help you, um beyond that with readers. I mean, I think, a book, I think one thing that is very interesting as a writer is just seeing how word of mouth is a really interesting kind of way of getting books to people, like you're reading books and then you're, and I mean, this is maybe one reason to be on social media is because there is a really thriving literary community on, say, Facebook or like Threads or stuff, or various places, Instagram. I'm also not on TikTok, and I'm not gonna go on TikTok because I'm just like, I can't do another. There's some people love it, but I think, that's, one nice thing is actually being able to share, other people's work on my page, or, I just have a friend who just published his novel he was trying to sell for a long time, and there it is, now it's out there. So, um, I think it's kind of mysterious, but I think the main thing is you write something you believe in, and then, you will find ways to get it out into the world.
Yeah, I agree. And first of all, there was a New York Times article. It came out a couple of years ago now. Maybe you saw it, Karen, that talked about how the number of followers doesn't necessarily translate into book sales.
Right.
And they
Right.
know that. The publishing industry knows that. Um, the other thing is that social media helps you to be in conversation about the things that you care about.
Mm.
So I don't know, Lisa, what your topic is, but for example, Erica Roebuck, whom I know is someone who writes historical fiction, and a lot of her work is around Ernest Hemingway, things fiction based on the life of Ernest Hemingway. And so I see her in groups where she's talking about Hemingway or Hemingway fans. She posts things in Key West groups about what's going on in Key West. She's in conversation with people who are interested in what she's interested in. So when there's a book, they will be interested in that book. And again, it's a natural thing. Ideally, you're writing about what you already care about, so you're going to be in that realm. My son is, he's still got a year in college, but he's been, engaged for a while now with people in social media around the anime community and going to anime conferences. And now he's, creating a project right now where he's, letting people on social media know, he's been letting them know these characters. Like he's been sending posts about who they are and doing little videos about them. And now there's going to be a bigger project around that. And now he's kind of spotlighting that this is coming, right? This is coming. And it's just a natural thing. It's something he already loves to do. He's been in conversation with other people about it. They are excited about it, and it's going to come out as a natural process that's part of his creativity.
Mm.
Do you know Austin Kleon's work? The guy who wrote Steal Like an Artist?
Um,
Oh my God.
I,
It's three little books. They're like this big. And one is called Steal Like an Artist. The other is called Show Your Work. And I forget what the third one is called. He's an artist in Texas, but these are really popular little books, but it's all about exactly this process of doing your art, um,
Mhm.
getting it out there in a organic way, and just doing the work. And it's hugely interesting and inspiring. And I subscribe to his Substack every Friday, and he's just always reading interesting things. I love to see what he's reading, what he's working on, what his studio looks like, the things that he's working on, and that's exciting, right? I am part of his conversation.
Nice.
would you tell me his name again?
Austin Kleon, spelled with a K, Kleon. And
Is
that
that,
first book is called Steal Like an Artist.
That sounds great.
I get all three of them. They're great.
Oh, cool.
well, thank you both for your comments. I appreciate it.
Oh, I would like to ask a question, but before I ask a question, I would uh, say to Lisa that this is a really, a concern of every writer, marketing. I have also, written 3 books, and I feel that, the time, the years that I spent writing, are the difficulties that I faced writing, they are far less than, when it comes to, sell the book. So, these are all the big packages that, of my books. I
Oh,
I self-published books,
Mm.
and so
wow.
this is one of them.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so these all big packages that you see, I had like this, other packages also. So, I keep selling the books, myself. I self-publish the books.
Yeah.
So because I am in Pakistan, and here, I feel I face different problems here. Right, people don't publish work in English, because they say who reads English, like this. So because I had written books, and I am also a teacher. So what I did, that my students, they love my work. So just give them my books. I got these all books self-published. So My books are only read by my students at school. So Lisa, what you need to do wherever you are, just your as a writer, your work, your job is to write, produce the books, So then see where you can sell the book or where you can give the book. So I have still, dreams that one day I would publish internationally, or I would find a publisher once I am an MFA, or because MFA would give me more confidence and all these things. So, I would just say that, you need to just write, bring the best stories in the world, and then those stories would, carve their own path. So, yeah.
That's good
And my
advice.
question is, that does Alma give any scholarships to people, students like me from Pakistan who are low income and who don't make much money but they have big dreams, you know?
Yeah. Right now, the only scholarship that we have is the Refer a Writer Scholarship. You'll see that on our website. It's a $2,000 scholarship. That's the one thing about low residency programs. Usually, an MFA will have assistantships that allow students to teach undergraduates as part of like a fellowship. But in a low residency program, the students aren't on campus in that way. Now, that is something we hope to do in the future, like find other small scholarships that we can offer our students, but nothing like a full ride type of thing. So I'm sorry about that, but that's the case.
Mhm.
Okay, okay.
Anything else? Okay. Well, then I think we can wrap it up for this evening then. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Karen, for that wonderful reading. This
So
has been
much.
new fiction by our MFA faculty. I'm Sophfronia Scott, director of the program. Our application season is open. If you want to start the program in January, you can apply by November 30th. Otherwise, our deadline is May 30th, and we look forward to seeing your work. Our website is alma.edu/MFA. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.